is John. You're closest to the microphone, so we'll start with you. If you would just introduce yourself. We're not going to use it. Just introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, who you work for, and then talk about the project that you were involved in.
My name is John Sadler. I'm with the Florida Forest Service. I've been I'm prescribed fire manager. I've been doing that for the last 10 years. However, today I'm representing all of the prescribed fire councils in Florida. We have three. For those that aren't familiar, we have a North, Central, and South Florida Council.
I'm Tom Dooley. I'm the fire manager for the Nature Conservancy in South Carolina. And I've been working for the Nature Conservancy for almost 15 years now, all of it in fire management at various places across the country. And I'm representing the Sewee Longleaf Conservation Cooperative, which is a longleaf implementation team just north of Charleston.
My name's Tony Grossman. I'm with the Florida Forest Service. I work with our rural landowner assistance programs and our outreach efforts to reach rural landowners. I'll be talking about our programs internally as well as a partnership that we have called the Florida Land Steward Partnership, which is a consortium of NRCS, University of Florida, Florida Forest Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Commission here in Florida, amongst other partners.
And I'm John Scott. I'm the manager for their Southern Regional Office with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. I see a lot of familiar faces. I know there's a lot of applicants and grantees here today, but we're a nonprofit 501c3 foundation, and I currently manage a partnership called the Longleaf Stewardship Fund, which is on behalf of a number of federal and private interests, and we provide grants to state, local nonprofits to essentially increase the restoration of longleaf pine, including getting prescribed fire on the ground.
Okay. Anybody want to talk about a particular project that they've been working on, or one of their long-term projects that's been successful?
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So the Sewee Longleaf Conservation Cooperative is, like I said, it's a longleaf implementation team based out of just north of Charleston, South Carolina. It's about 800,000 acres, and there's some urban interface issues, those types of things. And it's anchored by the Francis Marion National Forest. And we've worked at a number of different aspects in terms of communication and outreach, and some of the things that a couple of the things that we've tried and succeeded at least getting in place a community wildfire protection plan. And for about 200 to 250,000 acres of the landscape. So it's an entire fire district, rural fire district around the Francis Marion National Forest, and that's been a huge get for us. We just had the plan signed, but we had to go to county council, so it wasn't a political thing, but it could have been a political thing. But we had lots of support at the local level, fire district level, at the state level, at the federal level to get this done. The rubber's going to start meeting the road here in October, but we're hoping to have some money flow into it that we can do projects on the ground on private lands in that area. The other thing that we did that was pretty successful, and I've seen this in some of the survey answers and just knowing what's going on in the South, is we had a fire festival right outside, within the Francis Marion National Forest, and it was coordinated and put on by several folks representing different agencies within the Sewee Longleaf Conservation Cooperative, and it was a one-day thing. It was probably a 4 to 5 hour event, and it was just a place where John Q. Public could show up and have fun, be in a family-friendly environment, and still learn about fire. And we had media there. We had a magician, some people making balloon animals. We had about a 10-minute movie. It was at this visitor center and they have an auditorium with a movie theater. So we had a 10-minute movie playing on loop about longleaf pine forests and using fire to manage those. We had a live fire demonstration that I was in charge of, along with some of the Forest Service folks. The area was probably about half the size of this room, and it was just a grassy native planting area inside the parking lot, so the chance of escape was pretty much nil. And but it was just big enough for us to take 3 swipes with it with a drip torch and do a backing fire, a head fire, and some flanking fire. And people stuck around throughout the day. Some of them showed up just to see the red wolves, and didn't know that this thing was going on, but they saw a junk castle and decided to hang out for a little bit. And there were food trucks and stuff like that. So it was a great event. 300 people attended it. We had people coming up to us afterwards. There were school groups or weekend children's groups that brought their groups out to attend, and I had a gal on my fire crew, and there were a group of girls that gaggled up around her, and were like, oh, because it's not seen as it's seen as a man's thing or a man's world, the fire world, I guess. And to see those girls kind of come up and start picking her brain about what she did and how she got into fire and all this other stuff was really cool.
Can I get somebody to put a note up on one of those boards that just says public demonstrations? How many people here within your organization put on public demonstrations at some time during the process? Looks like maybe half or so. The ones that don't, have you tried them in the past and you're just not going to do them anymore, or is it just not something you've been engaged in? Somebody says that. Okay. I've been at several of them. We had one where we actually, you want the media to show up for sure, because you want to extend that vision and leverage your message. And we had one where everybody was standing around, the trucks were out there, everything was ready, and we're kind of going, why aren't the media out here? And it turned out that there had been a murder about 10 miles down the road, about, what was it, an hour before this thing, and everybody was over there. So don't be upset if they don't show up. Okay. Anybody have any questions? This is just going to be as free form as we possibly can. All right, so the big thing that you seem to stress is that these public demonstrations were really valuable to you.
I think they're huge. You can print brochures and have them in your hand and pass them out and stuff, but it's usually something that somebody takes home and they put it somewhere, and then unless it's like detailed and the person is interested in it or wants to acquire more knowledge of it, but to reach out to a group of people that we don't often interact with, that's the way to do it. You attract them through food trucks and junk castles or whatever, and then you have an opportunity to have a conversation.
How many of these do you think you hold a year?
Well, this was the first one that we did as a result of funding from NFWF, and this is after talking with the folks that are on the steering committee of the implementation team. We want to do it annually. One of the cool things too, and Daryl Jones, who's going to be on the next panel, had a big hand in this. We timed it with a month-long gubernatorial proclamation for Prescribed Fire Awareness Month, and that worked. That was kind of like hand in glove. We could promote that, and that in turn could promote the fire festival as well.
Very good. Okay. Yes, sir. Did you select the area based on like their particular need, or there was resistance to fire, or you identified an area with opportunistic?
It was just opportunistic because the facility was ready-made, the visitor center, and we used that facility. They have a red wolf exhibit with red wolves. It's a high-profile area right along Highway 17 between Charleston, north of Charleston, on the way up towards Myrtle Beach. It was just a ready-made facility for sprawling out and setting up booths and tables, and people could be outside, people could be inside. Yes, ma'am.
In terms of planning, contingency plan in case the weather didn't cooperate? What was your backup? That would
Colette, what, yeah, what,
So what, we didn't have a plan, as far as rain, we had tents for the booths and so forth, people could go inside the building and in the auditorium covered with fire video was moving. So we couldn't actually do the demonstration first. We had a crew burn, there were two islands.
There were two islands.
And so they were just, so if they weren't able to burn with conditions that day, you could burn out. Okay.
and we also burned prior to the festival, like just a few days prior to, we also burned a small patch of woods right up next to the parking lot as well, so people could see that.
Big trucks are helpful too. Big pieces of equipment.
Yeah, pavement queens, anything you can bring out there that's kind of shiny and has chrome, diamond plate on it is attractive.
There you go. All right, thank you. John Scott?
Sure. So I guess I'm a little unique compared to the other panelists in that the organization I work for doesn't actually work directly with landowners, but we do support the work to actually communications and actually the on-the-ground restoration and management work. So some of the things I just wanted to talk about specific with Longleaf Stewardship Fund, instead of highlighting individual projects, was maybe just to talk about, I guess, the desire, one of the things that we can do through Longleaf Stewardship Fund is support innovative projects. And you've heard a lot about innovation and, what's the silver bullet in terms of increasing prescribed fire. And it just sounds like there's not one, but there's a lot of projects out there taking place right now that are working on different messages and different communication tools for that. And we're, fortunately, the Longleaf Stewardship Fund can provide some flexibility with our funds to make up to support some of that. But one of the key things that I think Reggie and others mentioned too that I want to stress is that we and our partners are really focused on putting fire and putting trees in the ground in the most appropriate places, to get the most conservation return on investment. And so one of the things that we're working on, and I'll be talking about with the local implementation teams later this week, is working with the teams to develop conservation plans that address a myriad of issues, not just planting and burning, but communications and strategy for where they're going to be working on the landscape to best direct those funds. And I think communication about prescribed fire and the strategies that go behind that are going to be a key component of those plans, and it's something that we really want to continue to move forward and continue to help support the local implementation teams through Longleaf Stewardship Fund and the resources that we have available to do that. So just want to make the group aware of that. And also, the other thing I do want to mention, since not everyone here is specific to Longleaf, we do have another program called the Cumberland Plateau Stewardship Fund, which is, we like to use the word stewardship fund and everything apparently, but it's focused on shortleaf restoration in the Cumberland Plateau, which is another fire-dependent community. So really looking at I know this is focused more on fire-dependent ecosystems, and just wanted to make people aware of that program. But the fund supports a myriad of activities from capacity to actually, technical assistance to landowners, getting the message out, communications materials, like the awareness event that Tom was talking about. So, as I mentioned, we do want to be strategic, but there is flexibility and opportunities for us to support, innovative projects.
What kind of communication support do you bring expertise to the table as well as dollars?
Not really. I mean, we're not really the communications technical expertise folks. Really, we're trying to drive the dollars towards partnerships where they can bring together those different, various components of expertise, to address things like communication and multiple messaging and things like that. So.
How many people feel like their communication experts understand what they're trying to say? Raise a hand. Nobody.
I'm going to say that people at Coal Timbers,
absolutely wonderful. They are the best.
They got a good feel.
So do you find that there's this gap between what you're trying to say and is it what they're hearing or the method that they're trying to put down? Yes, sir.
My opinion is people's lives are busy. It doesn't take much to distract people. Nobody these days can claim ignorance. And I don't know why, from a human dimension standpoint, why people don't get in the game more, because it's not because lack for information. I mean, there's information out there for laws too. You know, why people don't access it, you know, you can lead a horse to water, and that's about the best you can do. So it amazes me that people get to that. All of the month's information, nobody can really claim, but nobody's there to help them. I don't know what it takes to get them driving into the store.
It's interesting, I had a mentor one time who said, just remember, they really don't care. You really don't. You have to find that hook. That what do they need? Not what you need, but what need do they need filled? And how can you use that as a leverage for getting your message to them? That's the two axioms. They really don't care, and what's in it for me. Hey, about who they are. That's really important too. That is. Yes, ma'am.
Another aspect to that is, I got to kind of how we do people don't know. They're caught up in
But to expand on that is like, as a licensed forester, there's millions of acres of unmanaged forests. And yet when people finally do plug in their registered forester or somebody, they're like amazed, like, really? You can do that? And it's like, oh my gosh, where have you been? You know, what's around you? But there's plenty of licensed registered consultants, whatever, and yet there's all this unmanaged forest, and why they don't get in the game, something triggers them along the line that, oh, I think I'll check out manipulating my land, or I gotta come up with 10 grand to, you know, let Junior go through a semester of school. Then they get interested. I don't know how you encourage them to do estate planning, or, you know, these are zillions of dollars of financial resources, and yet people just don't really see the value of land management. But there's no shortage of stewardship around. I don't know how to slack them silly to get them interested in taking an active, you know, approach to management.
Hey,
I mean, their goals and objectives, not mine, theirs.
if I could back up a little bit, Chuck. As a Florida Forest Service employee, our communications folks do a great job. But as I am representing the prescribed fire councils, we don't really have a communications group. So that's why I didn't raise my hand, Chelsea, a while ago.
It's been noted.
She did.
News was removed.
No, Chelsea does a really good job. Well, she started out in Perry as a mitigation specialist, and as all you'll know, Perry's in Taylor County, which is the forest capital of Florida. So they do a lot of activities there. They have a festival, and a lot of stuff goes on there. So they get a lot of outreach there. You know, as a council, Florida councils are a little different than some. You know, it's not really like a group. It's more just a group of people, and so it seems hard at times for us to actually do a project. One that we did, it's been years ago, but all three councils were instrumental in getting county resolutions in nearly every county in Florida that supported prescribed burning. I think they missed Miami-Dade, Broward, and I think Lee County. I'm not sure, but so that was a project that they did. That was in the late 90s. Another one that North Florida Council did a few years back was they had a prescribed fire media day. They kind of coordinated that, which was a field exercise. They would do it, you know, somewhere where they could get the media trucks in off a paved road, and we're planning on doing that again. I missed our last steering committee meeting, so I'm not sure.
You've been assigned that.
As is always the case.
Leave it to Greg.
Right, but I know we talked about maybe doing something off Highway 20 in the Tallahassee area. So that's kind of a project that we have planned as a North Florida Council, is to get it just like a media burning day. We would go out and get them some Nomex and let the fire be near an area where they can actually film it without having to get into the woods too far. So, but as somebody mentioned, you know, contingency planning is important, and being able to plan something like that, you know, more than about 2 days out to get good weather, this can be tricky. So That's our plans right now for the North Florida Council.
Yes, ma'am.
I know there's a lot of annual meetings coming up for the prescribed fire councils over the next few months, and I was just curious how involved in Florida are landowners as part of your council, and how much input and participation do they have? Because I know in some states it's very little, and then there's states like Alabama and some others where there's a large landowner component, so I was just curious.
Well, in Florida, we get a lot of private landowners that are also burners. You know, they do their own burning. And a lot of them are certified burners. And a neat trick that we have in Florida to increase our participation in our council meetings is participation counts as your continuing education requirement to keep your certification. So that really, I like to think a lot of people show up for other reasons, but and they do. You know, a lot of people show up every year, and but there is that component that show up. You know, I'll get calls. I get them all the time. You know what? You know, I got a letter saying my certification's about to expire for education. You know, where can I go? What do I do? And I generally steer them toward a council meeting. Now, as far as you know, the demographics, what percent of the attendees at a council meeting are private landowners? It's very small. You know, a lot of times they have a hard time even, you know, finding out about the meetings. If they've ever signed up, I send them an email, you know, so they know about that. But, you know, but just your general landowner that's not a certified burner, we have very few of those show up at the council meetings. But they do periodically show up.
Do you know who they are?
Yeah, I can. When we register, we ask some questions, and we can get that. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you know, at least for the North Florida Council, we ask, you know, what your affiliation is and if they're certified or not. So I do have some numbers.
Is there any, and this is not just to you, John, but to the group, is there any interaction with like tax rolls and landowners, and not blind outreach, but just directed outreach to people who own more than X acres of land within your region? Yes.
I'd say when the North Florida one started, we did some of that, trying to make sure it really started because there was some concern that the legislature was going to really curtail prescribed burning in the state. And we had our first meeting, I think, in 89, and we started to get people together, and to do that, we used what Paul Timbers had, we used what at the time Division of Forestry had, and then anybody who had landowners around them, we tried everything we could, and we had huge numbers of information going out, and this was pre-email, so each individual group was fighting the bullet on posting, and soon found that it was better to go with email, obviously, and then you're kind of stuck with what you've got because you don't find, you know, going to the county tax.
We purchased the tax rolls for our state, and this is for programs in general, including fire. But so we can do a search by parcel size, and so if we're doing something, we will do 30 acres and above for a particular county, and then all adjacent counties as well. We will pull the tax rolls for folks that are like 60 acres and above. So we can, you know, if we have, and our funding varies, so depending on how much we have available for PR, we can send it to more or less landowners depending on, you know, the amount of postage that we have available.
So they don't acquire email addresses that way. It's just a physical address.
You know, yeah, at this point we're building our email address, but a lot of those are kicked back bad. About a third come back bad. And so we found that the tax roll list is probably the most effective for it. What do they cost? Well, actually, we have one of our professors who does work with the tax commission, and so we worked out a deal where as long as it's related to forestry and whatnot, we can use that road, protect road for free.
In Florida, I would think it's free.
It is. We have it.
On the public records act. Yes, sir.
Yeah, poor folks have poor ways, and I don't mind leaning on others. As an example, Alabama Forest Owners Association. You know, there's 410,000 individual NFWF forest owners, 10 acres or more in Alabama. Not all of them are members of AFOA, but it's a free website, so they promote. We put our annual meeting out there. We put out certified farm manager workshops, recertification, 4 days between AFOA, Forestry Association, Alabama Natural Resource Council, made up of USDA. I mean, so we ask all these other people that have access and lists of thousands and thousands of members. I just write on them and say, will you put this out for us? And I'm not bashful. I mean, I beat on them a lot to make sure they run their mill route. And that's one reason tremendous amount of support and cost of prescribed fire council that we do that. But we're using good communication outlets in.
Let me mention one thing that FWC has done over the last couple of years. We now have 1 million names and 1 million emails that are verified in the database where people have said, I'm interested in information about, and then it's a check the box. You guys have seen these before. It says, would you like to subscribe to? And for a very long time, our homepage really resisted putting that little pop-up thing on there. Would you like to give us, would you like more information? And the company that helps us with our email services said it is so common now that you really won't see the complaints that you did. We went from 70,000 to 90,000 in a month of verified people who signed up and said, yes, I'm interested, I want to get information about this. So there are ways that you can acquire these names of people who are motivated enough to give you their name and said, I'm pre-qualified, I'd like information from you guys. That leads me to the next question. When you have the public demonstrations, people register, you get their names, is there any follow-up that you do?
I'm a proponent of Southern Fire Exchange. Every time we have anything to do with fire, I've got their email sign-up and some of their articles to try and drive these people into their store to get them excited.
I think that's a really critical thing. If somebody comes to your event and gives you their email address, don't store it, use it. Start talking to them about things. Open up that conversation with them about, would you be interested in, or thank you for, even if it's just a thank you for coming, if you need any more information, please come to this webpage, call this number, do something to make that linkage with that person. Yes, sir.
I want to touch on a couple of projects that we work on. One is the Pine Woods in southeast Mississippi, and the other is shoreline restoration in North Alabama. And we start with tax roll data to build our database. But then we do direct marketing, and we don't just send out one piece of information to landowners, but we send it out 4 times over a 10 or 14-day interval between mailings. And we find that response rates increase up to the 3rd mailing, and then they start to tail off. We use a lot less verbiage than what you think you should use. But we get really good response rates, 7% of the mailings we've got. But once we get the response rates, we go out and acquire consumer data on all of the landowners for the tax roll, and it's commercially available, and it's not expensive. And then you can look at the people that responded to your marketing and sort of categorize them and then clone them for your next time that you market. And just an example of one of the projects we're doing in North Alabama on Cumberland. One thing that was interesting to me, we classified our landowners into 2 groups, hunters and recreationists. And by the way, the goal of this is short-lived restoration, but it's also acres burned and invasives treated. But we classified our audience into 2 groups, hunters and recreationists. And hunters had consumer opinions for camping, hiking, hunting, and fishing. Recreationists had opinions for birding, gardening, and photography. And when we looked at the responses, we gave them 3 different offers. 1 will send you more information in the mail. 2 will send you an invitation to a field day. Or 3 will send you a visit from a professional forester on your property to talk about your goals and objectives. And the more information, invitation, was 50-50. Half of them were hunters and half of them were recreationists. But the responses that would accept a visit from a forester on their property, almost all of them, I think but one, was a hunter. And so knowing that, now when we go back out with our next mailing, those people that are classified as recreationists, we won't waste a mailing offering a site visit just yet because they're not comfortable. They're not ready for that. So we'll just offer them more information and we'll get a higher response rate.
Can we get, just so that we start a list here, can we get tax rolls put up there? And then what I like to call direct mail magic, because there really is some magic involved in direct mail. You've seen, you know, like Publishers Clearinghouse. You know why it's so thick? So you can't stick it in the shredder. That's why they use stick with cardboard in some of those things. So you can't just take it and stick it directly in the shredder. You got to open it up and feed it into the shredder piece by piece. And that means that you're going to look at some of the items in there. There's actual thought that goes through because it costs them extra money to do that. But they have figured out that by making it thicker and heavier, you're going to open it and we get more response that way. So there is some magic in direct mail, particularly the message. You know, it's usually, it's some kind of benefit message right up front and then the supporting information down below, as opposed to all the supporting information at the top and then you buried the benefit message down at the bottom of it. Okay, Anthony, tell us about your project.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with finishing up one we've already talked about, and that is this using property tax appraiser information. We're working with Chris right now, the American Forest Foundation. We're taking that property appraiser data and doing a multi-level analysis on it. One is, where are the best properties located? And for our purposes, that's for the Forest Stewardship Program. We did an assessment of which lands are the most valuable to meet stewardship goals. And we found those properties, we know where they're at, and so we're analyzing which properties are out there that aren't already being managed. We also have the geographic information available to us where we're currently managing the land. So we can screen out those that are already being managed. We can screen out those that aren't a priority for our program area. And now we've got a much smaller list to work off of. And we're going to just focus on the larger landowners, assuming they're more influential in their neighborhoods. So that's what Chris is going to be helping us with next, is getting that mailing out. We've got the geographic part almost finished up. We'll be working with Chris in great detail real soon on how to shape those mailings. That's an internal one that was funded through a Forest Service grant. It's multi-state. Texas and Mississippi are on board with us in this, and we're all doing similar work there. And another conversation earlier I wanted to follow up with was, how do we get people to respond? And the end goal here is to get them to do something on their land. And typically they don't do that just based on information they've received through some source. They respond to people. So if they haven't met somebody who's done it before, haven't talked to a forester or a biologist who's experienced with this, the odds of them doing anything at all on their land is very, very low. And that's where the next part of my talk comes in, is we have 40 county foresters out there, not near enough to address the 100,000 plus landowners who are needing our assistance. How do we reach all of them and get people in front of them? And that's through partnerships. We can't do it all with our county foresters. NRCS can't do it all with their district conservationists, and FWC can't do it all with their private landowner biologists. So we're working together to make sure that we're addressing these things in the best way possible. If we have expertise in one thing, we'll go out and help that landowner. If FWC is the right person, they'll go out and help them. We don't try to do it all ourselves as we have in the past. So this Florida Land Steward Partnership helps us coordinate those efforts, particularly in our outreach side. We've coordinated field days much better. As soon as 5 years ago, as recently as, we were holding multiple workshops in the same county that were covering very similar topics. That doesn't happen anymore. We coordinate between our agencies where we need a workshop, what the topics are going to be, when we're going to hold them, to make sure we're doing the best we can in each area geographically and getting the right people on the agenda and addressing the topics that are of interest to landowners in that area. The Florida Land Steward Partnership It's been around for about 9 years now, and we've grown a little bit each year, getting more partners involved. But it started with just Florida Forest Service, the Fish and Wildlife Commission, NRCS, and University of Florida Extension folks. And we've now got folks like Tree Farm helping us out, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and a bunch of others that are involved. We have a website, which is good, but it doesn't get near the hits you would like it to. It's a lot of good information on it. We've spent a lot of time building it. It's helpful though because it's somewhere we can tell people, if you need more, go here, and we can get them the information. They don't usually find us on their own. We have a newsletter that goes out quarterly. That's the follow-up piece that we're always talking to them. And we have a bi-weekly calendar update. What's going on in your area over the next month? And that comes out every 2 weeks just to remind you these things are going on. So it's an email listserv. People volunteer to be on it, and they get real regular mailings from that. We have a blog which is just sharing stories about what's going on in our profession or interest area. We have a Facebook page which is more for the landowners themselves to share photographs and talk to each other, to share their experience with what we do. We don't have to do a whole lot there, just to moderate and make sure it's not going off in a wild direction. And we have a calendar that we put out every year. It's a wall hanging calendar, and month by month it tells landowners things or prompts them with ideas. It's time to think about your burn plan, time to get an authorization. It's time to order your seedlings. Every month there's a list of things that remind that landowner this is the time you should be thinking about doing this. And it's also got good stories about other landowners that are doing these things, and it's got little informational blurbs about specific practices like prescribed burning or like mechanical site preparation, those kind of practices that they may encounter and want to know more about. So those are the things that I'm involved in.
Let me throw this out to the group. And if you raise your hand, I may call on you, so keep that in mind. How many of you have an effective cross-agency coordination product going on within your area of responsibility? Yes, ma'am. Tell me about yours.
Well, I wanted to ask one thing with I'm part of Sewee Longleaf Conservation Cooperative, coordinate that, and we have a cost share subcommittee with our members. So we've gotten funding with have an extra pot of cost share funding. So we coordinate with an NRCS agent, the South Carolina Forest Fish and Wildlife Service, who all have some form of money for landowners. In addition to Center for Area Property, have some extension but we have a meeting coming up where we'll sit down and discuss landowners and then which funding might be the best fit. We'll go out and meet with landowners. We'll talk to them about that as well, with their goals, with their time frame. And then SLC cost share pot is really built to try to meet those niches for landowners where the others don't necessarily. It's very a lot quicker facilitated stuff with wildlife information. So they can do a quick contract, they can get money on the but it's partnership with so that we can look at the landscape together and talk about it as a partner and strategize about where we've also done longleaf mapping, and use some tools to try to develop priority areas. We need to use that more effectively. Putting in on land that have come out as land for all the rest.
That's good. Let me narrow this down a little bit. How many people, by show of hands, how many people hold workshops in order to get people to either accept prescribed fire or to put more fire on their ground to public? Just by show of hands, how many people hold public workshops?
Sorry, what was the last part?
Either acceptance of prescribed fire or put more fire on their private property. Not just the general, we want you to like it. Just raise your hands if you hold public workshops. Okay, almost everybody does. How many of you coordinate with the other agencies within your state or jurisdiction that are also holding workshops? Okay, good. At first, when I said that, I was like, nobody raised their hand, and I was going, wow, there's some low-hanging fruit. Yes, sir.
Another example is we have Alabama Natural Resource Council. That's an mouthful of Natural Resource Council. And these are voting and non-voting members. And they're also the top people we hold accountable, like the State Park, like the director of the NRCS in Alabama, landowners, Auburn University, just anybody that's responsible. So the Association of Consultant Boards is Alabama chapter, so we meet not enough twice a year, but it's a way that we can all share what's going on in daily communications networks. Share, hey, I got this event, and it's in everybody's interest. Prescribed fire, for example.
Sure.
All that. So when we meet, they don't just say, okay, here he goes again talking about fire. And so everybody's vested, and we make decisions. And again, when the state forester says, we'll take care of that, it's not some underling later you can go put a boot up there and say, we say you do.
Yep.
And so to me, that's a way of taking big natural resource management jurisdiction it is, take some decisions, plot, or have a good communication strategy. Man, let's get some stuff done. Run it up the fight. We can beat our ground. Do have fight. Shouldn't be afraid to put them on. But that takes effort.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that we've touched on, but I hope that during this next day or two that we can elaborate on it a little bit better, is landowner to landowner engagement. You know, if we're trying to sell something, I think, and what I've seen in the past, is that a landowner to landowner is going to be not only respected, but also going to be trusted a little faster than an agency. That's unfortunate. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
And it's up to us as landowners, and I feel like if we own property, that we need to advocate for something that's going on beyond our own boundaries. And so we need to find better ways of engaging other landowners to landowners and promoting what we're doing, so they are asking the questions, coming to us, other landowners that are doing management, doing prescribed fire, so that we can have that conversation and hopefully maybe lead somebody in the direction of good management, good prescribed fire, so they're either constructing their own prescribed fire out or doing it themselves. So we have a group that's talking about that with Tiffany and group. That's not been mentioned yet, but just a landowner that a landowner is a strong thing to sell.
You know, I have a pure reference. That's the next thing that I was going to talk about. That's one of the most powerful selling items that you have, and that pure reference can be nothing more than you know, a quote from somebody recognizable within your area in that brochure that you're building. I've worked with these guys. They really help. I think you should too. Name and whatever. Somebody that's recognizable. That really does sell very well. People look at that. Or if you've got one really, you know, the 100-pound gorilla in the neighborhood who owns a lot of land. This is sort of like, why do I care if a sports guy likes a sports coat, or if some athlete likes a sports coat and sells it to me? Well, it's because there's this human nature that I would like to be like that person, and that makes them more credible. Same thing with the very large landowners. But once again, you have to worry about local context. Sometimes you've got those very large landowners that the smaller guys are kind of going, you know, if he says do it, I'm not going to.
Yeah, yes. But if you've got landowners that's within the region or within the county or wherever, that say it's okay for this NRCS or on-the-ground consultant or agency person to give that contact information to another landowner who they just met, I mean, that will go a long way for that communication to happen.
That really takes that apostle, that person who's willing to kind of, you know, spread your message out there. And you have to cultivate those people. You have to work with them. it's not just a phone call once a year saying, hey, can you reach out to Bill and tell him we're okay and we're coming out there? There needs to be some kind of engagement. That's the kind of person that you want to get active on your board, or as the outside person that's invited or speaks at your workshops and things like that, so that they feel like they have some ownership. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I want to ask Salem. I know you do a lot of school groups and tours on your property. How do those come about? Well, it's all about partnerships. It's not one individual doing it. We've talked about partnerships here already. And I had one person many moons ago tell me that, I said, well, we need to do a field day here. And I said, I'm going to get so-and-so and this agency and Parks Commission involved with NRCS. He said, it's not going to happen. Well, we proved it wrong. And so that is the norm in Alabama now. It is all about partnerships. And for example, one of the last field days that we did at our farm 2 or 3 years ago, we had 300 plus people there, and people that were landowners and non-landowners. But we were talking earlier, somebody mentioned about tagging those people, asking them specific questions. Do you want to get information about this particular thing? And so out of that number, we got 40 people wanting management plans, and those went out, and they were responded to, and management plans were done on people that had not had management plans, and some people didn't even know what a management plan was. So those type of things are important, and we do tours for school kids every year and this sort of thing. That word kind of gets out in the community and put it in the paper, and we'll have people come to us at times wanting to do something on their property that we're doing. And so, and no matter how large that property is, we can show somebody that no matter how large the property is, you can do some good management and have effectual stuff happen there.
We've just got a couple of minutes left before we take our break for lunch, I think. One of the topics that came up several times was liability, people's understanding of liability. You guys, have you had any experience with, is that something that you hear on a regular basis? I'm concerned about liability. If it is, how do you answer it?
Address the actual prescribed fire statute as it's written in the books, and ensure that, I mean, obviously there's anything you do has the likelihood of coming with a lawsuit as a result of your actions. Whether you're driving down the road, which we do every day and probably is the most dangerous activity that we actually undertake. There's a lawsuit involved, there's liability involved, but we do it every day. It's the same thing if you can actually tell people that if you do X, Y, and Z, or A, B, and C, if you're a certified fire manager and you have a plan in place, and then you're actually covered, under the law, unless negligence or gross negligence is proven. And negligence is actually not an easy thing to prove. The onus is on the injured party to prove that. And nobody wants to have somebody involved in a car accident seriously injured or anything like that. I don't. And I want to do everything I can as a fire manager to ensure that doesn't happen. But that's what I try to talk to them about, the actual law that's in the books, and I think it's fear. People say liability, but the actual problem is fear, and that's what we've got to get over the hump on.
Yeah, and a lot of it too, and that comes up on the councils. We'll do a survey, future topics that you would like to see at the council meeting, and that one comes up pretty regular. Have somebody come and talk about liability. How do I get insurance, to do burning? And it's not just liability, but somebody mentioned earlier, if my fire gets out, how do I pay that bill? So that's a topic that's on a lot of people's minds, is how do I get insurance? For the consultants, if they're bidding on a project, there are insurance requirements for that, and not all companies will write for prescribed burning, even though it's on the books. There's certain liability protection. So there's a lot of companies are having, a lot of consultants ask me, where can I get coverage for prescribed burning and things like that. And there's not a lot of people out there that can offer that.
Tell them to move to South Carolina. Daryl, your agency can't recoup suppression costs, right? State can't. Well, the feds can, but the state can't. Yeah. So just don't lose it on the Forest Service.
Well, folks, we've just got a couple more minutes. You've got the panel in front of you. Is there a topic you'd like to ask, question you'd like to ask that we haven't addressed yet? Yes, sir.
I have one question, I guess, for John Scott up there. One of the things that I noticed, appreciate most about Longleaf Stewardship Fund is your guys' ability to bring in funding through private, like bring in the funding through the Southern U.S. International paper and the latest
Altria Group.
Yeah.
Yep.
How do you, why do they get involved and how do you get them, keep them involved? Donating their private money for our Longleaf burning.
Sure. So the question was, so Longleaf Stewardship Fund is we mentioned, has a number of public and private partners, and so the question was, how do we engage those private partners, which in this case in Longleaf Stewardship Fund are 3 corporations, and why are they interested in Longleaf and supporting prescribed fire, and really I think there are a variety of reasons. I mean, for instance, for Southern Company, I mean, they actually own and manage land that has longleaf on their property, and they're dealing with regulatory issues related to at-risk species, and so it's part of it is public relations, but part of it's also for helping them to address some of their regulatory concerns on their own properties. So we're really, when we do fundraising, we try to match up both the conservation and the corporate interests. It's really a balancing act of what are everyone's objectives and interests, and finding the best way to mesh those funds together and then put it into a comprehensive program that can support the overall objectives that we have as a foundation focused on fish and wildlife and their habitat improvement, as well as our federal partners, which we were created by Congress really to, for the purpose of creating public-private partnerships to bring these resources together, leverage these resources to really put conservation on the ground. And that's largely what Longleaf Stewardship Fund is focused on. But it's a constant process to keep them engaged and to illustrate the benefit. But I think it's part of it's storytelling and part of it's showing results. How many acres are we getting burned? Are those the most strategic acres? Are we doing it in the right place that's showing the most benefit to wildlife? Is it meeting the objectives of the various partners?
All right, last question. Yes, sir.
That doesn't hurt either.
Comment about what was landowner group, the park constellation, the successful project, restoration project, yes. Later exploring the opportunity to the southeast, available opportunity, and workshop, Tallahassee, and all and it's a landowner driven partnership, so it provides a vehicle that comes back and forth. Let's talk about
If I could throw one thing out there too, one of the things that we haven't mentioned is making lemonade out of lemons. And we had an incident in South Carolina this year where a district of the Sumter National Forest smoked out Greenville, which is, Daryl, like how many miles away from? I mean, it's a fair distance, 100 miles away. And their smoke column went up and came back down in Greenville, and people were complaining. Or at least curious about what was going on. And that was a perfect opportunity to take something that was potentially negative and turn it into a positive article about the use of fire in the state and what it means to the forest, to the wildlife, to the health of and the Forest Service wasn't in the wrong in actually lighting that fire. Daryl, you may have further detail if there, but it was even like things that may seem like a blip on the radar, if we could harness those things and put those things out in newspaper. And there was a great newspaper article that came with this that promoted it didn't promote it, but it talked about fire. And it was a great article that otherwise could have been a real kind of snarky thing. So I think it's relationships with reporters and news outlets as well, and making, when the opportunity arises, making lemonade out of it.
Sure. So that's also one of those opportunities where you know that's going to happen sooner or later. Plan for it ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Get your messages down. Know where you're going with it. Have the people already identified that's going to go on the Good Morning Show and talk to folks, that sort of thing. Because speed is of the essence for that. If you don't say something, somebody else is going to say it for you. All right, folks, it's lunchtime.